Can you tell us how important are these games for China?
They're very important to China's vanity. You know, Andrew, you study dictatorships more than most people, and dictators are incredibly vain. When I was a correspondent in China, I was told that I could write about almost anything and not get into trouble. This is a long time ago, but I couldn't write personally about the leaders. I'm sure Vladimir Putin is not going to invade Ukraine until these games are over because he doesn't want to upset the Chinese leadership. And they want to be able to strut upon the world stage. And the catalogue you've just read out, the pathetic moral cowardice of people who simply won't criticise them. I mean, let me call out someone else worse than Zali Steggall, and that's Paul Keating. Paul Keating described the British Foreign Minister last week as demented. Well, hasn't Paul Keating become the light heavyweight champion of the upper dog? Isn't this the instinct of a bully, because he knows the British will never react to him. He can similarly speak in insulting manner about the Americans and they'll never react to him. But when have you ever heard him call out the Chinese? So this tribune of human rights and reconciliation and cultural sensitivity and Asian values and all the rest of it, I haven't heard him say a word about Xinjiang or the Uyghurs or democracy in Hong Kong or anything else. He's certainly not going to say anything disobliging during these Winter Games. And, you know, it's not even as if people are being asked to lay down their lives. They don't even have the guts to speak out.
Yeah, well, let's be fair on Paul Keating. For many years, of course, he was on the Chinese dictatorship's Chinese Development Bank Advisory Board. So, you know, he doesn't want to offend the Chinese too much, I should imagine. I mean, I think those interests should always be declared, by the way. And to be fair to Australia, though, it has joined the US, Britain and Canada in joining a diplomatic protest at these Beijing Olympics. So they're not going to send politicians and diplomats to the Games. I tell you what, I've been following the Chinese official media for some weeks on this. The Foreign Ministry and the media have been blasted, China's Foreign Ministry have been blasting us for this decision. Should this worry us, or should this sensitivity tell us that actually we should promote human rights and live by human rights very explicitly, because China seems threatened by that?
Yes, I think the government was right to boycott at the official level these games. We probably wouldn't have sent a minister there anyway, but it's absolutely right to make the statement of principle. It's never wrong to tell the truth. It's never wrong to stand up for human rights against a bully and a dictator. So the Morrison government is infinitely morally superior to the likes of Paul Keating and the others who will never criticise China. Having said that, I actually am a little sympathetic to the idea that the Morrison government talks too much about China, simply because let me endorse Kevin Rudd's statement, I wish they would talk less and do more. I wish we had spent these 9 years of Conservative government acquiring an independent deterrent defence capability. You know, Hezbollah has 100,000 missiles. We announced that we were going to get long-range anti-ship missiles with which we could keep an enemy at bay. And do you know how many we plan to get? Up to 200. Have we received any yet? Not a one, I think. The government announced 18 months or 2 years ago it was going to open an independent missile manufacturing factory in Australia. Have you heard another word about it? I mean, this government, it has its strengths, but it's all presentation. So the things it says about China, that's great. That's great. Although I think it talks a bit too much. But I really wish its actions matched its words.
Well, yeah, over the break, I was astonished by this huge contract that it said, or policy it had now to the government, our government, to buy all these splendid tanks at costs that I can't even remember, tens of billions of dollars. And I'm thinking, why tanks? I mean, if we've got fighting a tank war in Australia, we've lost already, and we're certainly not going to send tanks to fight China. It just seemed to me a complete waste of, complete lack of focus on what the main challenge, the existential challenge we face. But anyway, listen, you mentioned Russia.
Right, Andrew. Can I just have one word on tanks?
I want to talk about Russia, because you mentioned Russia, how you didn't think it was going to invade Ukraine during the Winter Games. It didn't want to offend its new ally. And it's true, China and Russia the core now of an alliance of countries that promote anti-democracy, authoritarian countries that promote the theory that no one should actually ever say anything about the internal affairs of any other country. Russia has virtually surrounded Ukraine at the moment with more than 100,000 troops. It's threatened to invade any moment. Can you explain exactly why it is doing this? And is this really our fight as well?
Well, Andrew, I think to some extent it has to be our fight, because everywhere you go now, you hear these faux realists say, well, look, Ukraine, it's in Russia's sphere of influence. It's only 44 million people. What do we care? And then the same folks in Australia say, Taiwan, once mythically it was part of China, means more to the Chinese than it means to the Americans or us. What do we care? It's only 25 million people. Well, Andrew, I think that's absolutely wrong in principle. But one day, folks in our part of the world will be having this discussion. Well, Australia, it was always an oddment down there at the bottom of Asia. It was inevitable that an Asian power would take that land mass. It's only 25 million people. What do we care? And these sort of second-rate faux realist arguments are, I think, bad in principle and wrong in practice. Now, Putin is a thug, mired in his own narcissism, a kleptomaniac, but he's also mired in all kinds of crazy Russian mythology and ideology. He wants to reabsorb Ukraine as part of Russia, but he might not try to do that all in one hit. He's already taken a slice of territory. He's taken Crimea, he's taken Donbass. He's now effectively in control of Belarus. I think he might have up to 130,000 troops to the north and to the east of Ukraine. Now, he could do any of a number of things. He could just capture a sliver of territory between Donbass and Ukraine, or he could take Odessa on the Black Sea and cut off Ukraine from its sea access. The only thing that he's worried about is, will the West impose crippling sanctions? But here's a contradiction which you'll like. One reason the West is so feeble about sanctions, nobody in the West is going to defend Ukraine militarily, but they're not even maybe going to do sanctions, is because Russia provides about a third of Europe's gas and about half of Germany's gas imports. So Western Europe has gone green, which means it's banned fracking, it won't explore for gas, it won't produce its own fossil fuels, which means the only people who are allowed to produce fossil fuels are dictatorships. Russia, China, the regressive regimes of the Middle East, which means they've got all the strategic leverage. So probably if he does something in Ukraine...
Crazy.
Yeah.